Okay, Steve the Cat. Episode 1, Introduction, ready, and action. Steve. Steve, say the line. Steve, this is the intro. We talked about this. Oh, I see. You're still upset about the catering fiasco. Listen to me. The craft services table is for everybody. You have to share it with the Teamsters. It's in their contract. Come on, Steve. Steve, we've got to shoot the intro. Come on. 3, 2, 1. Action. Fine, we'll use the animatronic stunt double. Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat. I am your host, Steve the Cat. All right, folks, I'm going to level with you. This is not really Steve the Cat. This is a plush toy. You can see my hand in the shot. I'm sorry, this is just mortifying. This is so embarrassing. My special effects crew has let me down. All right, so I'm going to level with all of you. We're having some problems with the talent. Specifically, he is refusing to come out of his trailer because of some catering issues and lack of breakfast pastries. It's very technical. I don't really want to get into it. The problem is because of various contractual and production legalities and restraining orders, I am not allowed to appear on camera. I am Carl, the production assistant. I'm going to have to figure out a way to make all this work without me being able to appear on camera and Steve refusing to come out of his trailer. So here's what we're going to do. I'm just going to keep shooting as if this is working, and you guys are going to pretend that this is actually Steve the Cat, and we'll see if we can't fix all this in post processing. So away we go. Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat. I'm your host, Steve the... I'm going to stop this. Listen. What is Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat? Well, it's a show dedicated to an elevated discussion of the art of filmmaking. In other words, it's a show where we talk about horror movies. Now, of course, there are a lot of different kind of horror movies out there, but Steve the Cat is nothing if not a cat of the people, so we don't do art movies. We don't do effete foreign horror films with German titles where there's only 2 lines of dialogue, and when it's all over, you say, what the heck did I just watch? We don't do black and white movies where Cedric Diggory and the Green Goblin compete for the affections of a mermaid who may or may not be real. Yes, you know what movie I'm talking about. We do the fun stuff. We do the kind of stuff where you can pop some popcorn, watch with your friends, and keep score while you root for the guy in the mask. And you can do this all with a clean conscience, because the acting and story are so implausible that you can't take what is happening seriously. The great thing about these kinds of movies is that there are thousands of them available on streaming services, and a lot of them are free. This is especially important when you consider our budget of $0 per episode. Honestly, the only hard part is sifting through the thousands of movies that are available out there and coming up with some that are worth talking about. So let's be honest, there's a lot of bad movies out there. My goal is to try to help you find a few gems amongst all the bad ones. So let's get started. Since there are so many movies out there to choose from, I decided we should have some sort of theme running through the first few episodes, and what better theme for a show about horror movies than Scream Queens? You know them, you love them. Sometimes they're the sweet babysitter who totally didn't deserve what happened to her. Sometimes they're the slutty cheerleader who you kind of wanted to see get her comeuppance. Sometimes they're the final girl, the ladies you root for at the end of the movie, the ones that bravely fight for their lives against a masked maniac, and yet they can't run across an open field without tripping over nothing, or remember to lock the front door. Yes, I'm talking about you, Rachel Carruthers from Halloween 5. You survived Halloween 4. How do you not remember to lock the door? From Jamie Lee Curtis to Linnea Quigley to Danielle Harris, there are a lot of wonderful Scream Queens out there. So let's get to it. Steve the Cat's first ever Scream Queen tribute episode. So before we jump into a discussion of today's movie, we're going to need to go through a quick vocabulary lesson. Now, if you have any familiarity with social media, you know that there are bots out there that will try to ban things based upon certain keywords. And the best way to stay ahead of those is to be dynamic in your usage of the English language, or in our case, the invention of a new language. So let's go through our vocabulary lesson for this episode. Word number 1, denoggening. This is a noun that refers to the action of removing the head of a person or animal. Word number 2, bathtub destoppering. This is another noun, and this refers to the action of draining a person, animal, or organ of blood. And finally, possuming. This is another noun that refers to the action of converting a person or animal to a two-dimensional form through the use of a moving motor vehicle. Please note that the O is silent. Depending upon which part of the country you live in, you might refer to this as armadilloing as opposed to possuming. Either answer is acceptable. Please pay attention to these words. They will appear later in the episode. Alright, so let's take a minute to get to know our Scream Queen for this episode, Mercedes McNabb. Mercedes McNabb was born in Vancouver, British Columbia on March 14, 1980, so she is Canadian, but we will not hold that against her. After all, the Canadians have given us a lot of great rock and roll bands, so we'll forgive their ridiculous three-down version of football. She started acting at an early age, playing the Girl Scout in 1991's Addams Family movie, and she was also one of the campers in the 1993 sequel, Addams Family Values. Now, of course, fans of horror movies and television know her for her role as Harmony Kendall on TV's Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a role she later carried over to the spin-off show Angel. She's had other TV roles, including a guest role on Supernatural, and in 2006, she appeared in Adam Green's Ode to Slasher films, Hatchet. She's appeared in a handful of other horror movies, including a cameo appearance in Hatchet 2, as well as today's featured film 12. She's married with one daughter, and at this time appears to have retired from acting. Now, if you were going to play a game of 6 degrees of separation, you could do worse than to start with Mercedes McNabb. Let's talk about that. So if you start with Mercedes McNabb, you know that she appeared in Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, which ties her directly to Joss Whedon, which ties her indirectly, for example, to horror movie Cabin in the Woods. Now, I know there are some people who don't like Cabin in the Woods, and there's some people who absolutely love it. I'm in the love it category. I understand not everybody's in that category, but there you go. She is tied to that movie. But in addition, through Joss Whedon, she is directly connected to the Alien universe, because yes, Joss Whedon did write Alien 4, which I guess we can say at least it's not as bad as Alien 3. At least I don't remember it as being as bad as Alien 3. Quite frankly, it's possible that after seeing Alien 3, I had lost my will to live and no longer cared. I really don't remember at this point. It also connects her to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Joss Whedon having directed The Avengers and also had a hand in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. television series. It also connects her to Pixar's Toy Story universe because Joss Whedon did write the screenplay for the original Toy Story. It also connects her to other things that, well, frankly, are best not discussed. Now, in addition to her connection through Buffy and Angels, she also appeared in Hatchet, which connects her to a number of legendary horror figures, which gives her an indirect connection to, for example, the Friday the 13th series. So if you are looking for a way to connect Jason Voorhees to Buzz Lightyear, she's your girl. As I've mentioned, the film for today is 12. This is a slasher serial killer movie that was released in 2008. It was directed by Michael A. Nichols, and it stars Mercedes McNabb, Emily Hardy, Stephen Brand, and Nick Searcy. So let's talk about 12. 12 is a perfectly ordinary, run-of-the-mill, nothing special, but not terrible slasher movie. As I said, it was released in 2008, and it stars Mercedes McNabb and Nick Searcy, who you've probably heard of, and it also stars an assortment of others that you can look up on IMDb if you like, but it's unlikely that you've heard of any of them. The premise of the movie is that one by one, the residents of a very small desert town are viciously killed by a masked maniac. So in that respect, it's your run-of-the-mill slasher movie. In this particular case, though, the twist is that the masked maniac was recently released from prison after serving time for crimes against children, and he wears a mask as a result of horrible injuries inflicted on him by other inmates. So he has an axe to grind, so to speak, which he takes out on the townspeople who served on the jury that convicted him. Hence the movie's name, 12. Clever, right? Well, it must be clever because it takes the people in the movie forever to figure that out. Frankly, that's really all there is to tell you about this movie. Mercedes McNabb plays exactly the sort of vain, vacuous blonde that you've come to expect, though she's less over-the-top vain and vacuous in 12 than, say, she was in Buffy or Hatchet. Nick Searcy plays the town's deputy. He's a nice guy whose work ethic and investigative skills could charitably be described as less than stellar. I won't get into the details of how the killer goes about his business, because frankly that's the fun of watching, though I will say the movie kind of flirts with torture porn territory at the end. It's just a flirtation. It doesn't jump squarely into the torture porn genre like Saw or Hostel, but it is a little rough. 12 is not an art movie, and it's not a particularly compelling movie, although there are some compelling bits. I think the last couple of killings are fairly well done. They raise the hairs on the back of my neck. If nothing else, if you and your friends have a couple of drinks and want to munch some popcorn and give the Mystery Science Theater 3000 treatment to a slasher movie, you can do a lot worse. On the other hand, it is not a bad movie. I think the best word to describe it is perfunctory. So let's take a minute and profile the movie's villain. His name is Leonard Carlson. There he is. You see that he's wearing a mask because of injuries that were inflicted upon his face and head while he was in prison. He is a slasher, serial killer. He is also convicted of crimes against children. Now, I want to say right up front, the movie doesn't really delve into that other than to mention that that is why he was sent to prison. So if that's the kind of thing that turns you off, that you don't want to see in the movie, it's not really addressed in the movie. The movie stays away from that other than to say that's why he was in prison prior to the start of the film. Special powers. Well, his special power is extreme ticked-offedness, which grants him increased strength and resistance to damage. Now, he is not on the Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers level, but he is a big bad guy. Signature weapon. He doesn't have a signature weapon. He uses various weapons, including, but not limited to, firearms, a hunting knife, a pickup truck, and his bare hands. He does have a signature technique, which I'm not going to get into discussing here for a couple reasons. Number one, I don't want to spoil the movie for you. Number two, I don't want to run afoul of some of those social media bots that we discussed earlier, so I will just say that it involves the bathtub destoppering of those whom he feels have wronged him. All right, let's go to Steve's scorecard for the Mercedes McNabb classic movie 12. For starters, kills. There are 7 plus 1 off screen, and there are multiple additional victims that happen off screen either before or during the action, but not really part of the film itself, so I'm going to give the movie itself credit for 8. Bare breasts, 0. Sorry guys, it's not that kind of movie. Mercedes McNabb keeps herself covered and tethered the entire time. If that is really a problem for you, make it a double feature and stream Hatchet after you watch 12. Car chases. There's 2 of them. They're kind of sad, but they are there. There's 2 of them. Denogginings by firearm, I'm going to call it 1.5. Bathtub destopperings, we get the benefit of seeing 2, but there are multiple additional ones that occur off screen. Use of telephone to provide exposition. Oh, good Lord, yes. 4 times. I counted at least 4 times that the laziest trope in all of filmmaking was used in the movie 12. Problematic pimples. 1. Possumings. 1. And finally, bear traps. 1. But that's not all. With your viewing of the Mercedes McNabb Classic Movie 12, you get the following bonus features. You get stock footage of the Las Vegas Strip. You get a character named Phoebe Hostetler. Yes, Phoebe Hostetler, thus bringing together the classic sitcom Friends and classic sitcom The Big Bang Theory together into one character. Phoebe Hostetler, ladies and gentlemen. You get the loser ex-boyfriend who peaked as a high school football player. Who does not love that? You get the world's saddest topless bar. A saddest topless bar that is completely devoid of any nudity, but frankly, even if it was truly a topless bar, it would still be pretty darn sad. You get, there are no nice guys left in the world. Wait, there's one. Whoomp. Oh, never mind. Trust me, that one will make sense when you watch the movie. You get spectacularly poor police work. And finally, Steve's pet peeve. It's cavalry, not Calvary. Cavalry is a bunch of soldiers on horseback. Calvary is the hilltop where Jesus was crucified. Expecting cavalry to rescue you is geologically improbable. So Steve's final score for the movie 12, we give it 2 paws out of 4. It is not a classic, but it's not unbearable. It is okay if you're looking for a simple, straightforward slasher flick. If you've got insomnia and are just looking for something to kill a couple of hours, you could do a lot worse. Well, we're almost to the end of this episode, but not quite. Hey, we don't talk about just one movie per episode here. Let's take a minute and talk about some other stuff Steve watched this week. Number 1, Bloodfest. This is a self-referential horror comedy that has fun with various horror movie tropes. Basically, it involves, for lack of a better word, a horror movie version of Disney World with different themes for different parts of the park. It does not take itself even a little bit seriously. This is definitely a horror comedy. It's okay, but that's all. Honestly, I expected to enjoy this movie a lot more than I did. I would say it was kind of an underachiever and that it feels like it should have been better. That's not to say it's a bad movie. I enjoyed it. I won't say it's not worth watching. I will say I expected to like it better than I did. Second movie, Truth or Die. This is a teenage revenge movie where the nerd punishes his tormentors. This movie is British, so be warned. Meh. It was not bad, but nothing special. Again, not the worst use of your time, but for some reason I expected this movie to grab me more than it did. I'm not sure why. if I went back and watched it again, maybe I'd like it better. And I'm not saying you won't enjoy it. It just, for whatever reason, it seemed to underwhelm me when I watched it. Finally, Halloween Party. College students against a powerful, cursed internet ad. Yes, you heard that right. A powerful, cursed internet ad. I am not making that up. This is a PG-13-ish, or if you prefer, TV-14-ish kind of horror film, so it's fairly teenager-friendly. And it is Canadian, so be forewarned and keep your expectations in check, because Canadian horror movies are frequently god-awful. I will say that this one is better than a lot of Canadian horror movies, but at best I would say it's mediocre, so let the buyer beware with that one. So that's some other stuff Steve watched this week. Well, that about wraps it up for another episode of Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat. Join us again next time, and we'll talk about some more horror movies. Until then, take care, stay out of trouble, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye. Okay, Steve the Cat, episode 1, outtake for the conclusion in 3, 2, 1, action. Steve, are we doing this again? Oh, come on, man, I saved you a bagel. I'm sorry the Teamsters ate all the donuts. We'll get 2 dozen next time. Actors. I need another cat.